In this lesson, we're going to talk about how to read and write to files. So I'm going to open up a new instance of idle. We've been doing a lot of idle this week. We talk about our lab. I will create a code file for you, and we'll talk about that. But for right now, since these are a lot of one-off methods, idle's been perfectly fine. So for the beginning here, we'll use idle. So file reading and writing in Python is pretty simple. If you just want to do some basic file reading and writing, always remember to import path. Also, I like to import OS. So again, you can use some of the OS functions. So let's say we'll go back in our folder. We had 3 documents: boring document, hello.txt, and secret document. The book wanted to create spam.txt. Let's create spam.txt. We're going to create a new variable, path, my path equals path, spam.txt. And actually, let me let me make sure that our current working directory is correct. So path.cwd, and our current working directory is not correct, so it's good that we stopped. So if you recall from the previous video, cwd actually shows the current directory, and if we want to change that directory, we can use change directory in OS. So here we want to change the directory to this. Let's go ahead and change the directory, os.chdir, to the directory we want. All right, C users mat code samples week 06. Oops, I hit enter accidentally. And remember to escape your slashes, as always. I will always remind that. And also remember, os.change directory takes a string. We could have created a path object. So path.cwd. All right, so now we're in C users mat code samples week 06. So we're going to create a relative file here called spam.txt. So my path equals spam.txt. Sorry, path spam.txt. Now, this is a relative path. The real path of this is C users mat code samples week 06 spam.txt. Again, if you ever want to check, is a file or a path absolute or relative, my path dot is absolute. Sorry. And you need parentheses after this, is false because it is relative. So if you ever want to check, you can call is underscore absolute, open close parens, so the is absolute method on my path. So if we want to write text to the file, now notice the file doesn't exist yet. We can call write underscore text method on the path object. Now Python will first check if a file exists. If it doesn't, it will create a blank file, and then it will write the contents that you're passing to write text to that file and save it. So my path dot write text Okay, so I'm going to write hello world to the file. Now let's jump back to Windows Explorer. You see it doesn't exist yet. So I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. And we see 13. What that means is it has written 13 characters to the file. You can go ahead and just ignore it. But now we have spam.txt, and if I open this up, you see hello world was written to it. All right, that's the simplest way to read a file in Python. Now, or to write a file in Python. And let's talk about reading it. So my path dot read text. That's it. Just call it and hello world. You can save it to a variable. My spam text equals my path dot read text, and it'll just return a string. So my spam text will now be hello world. So that's how to read and write a file in a super simple way. Now I did this with relative paths. Let's do it with an absolute path, just so you see it does the same exact thing. If you're a little bit confused, let me just clear all the text here. So my path equals a new path object, and I'm going to take the full folder here. C users mat code sample week 06. Oh. Spam.txt. And just for good measure, so you don't think I'm lying to you, we're going to just delete spam.txt. It's no longer here. All right, you see in Explorer, it's gone. So now my path is absolute. You don't have to always call ibs absolute. I just want to show you this is an absolute path. So we're referencing the file directly. So we can do the same thing. My path dot write text hello world. All right, hit enter. We've written 27 characters. We're going to open it up, and we see we've written it here to the file. And we can go back in. My new file contents equals my path dot read text print my new file contents. And here we have the contents of the file. We saved it to the variable, and we've printed that variable to the screen. All right. You can also use the open function to open up a file, and you can either pass to it a relative path or an absolute path. We're going to do this and create a file object. So we had a path object before. What we can do is create a file object. So unlike strings, the file object itself takes a path object. So let me just copy this here. There's something going on with my keyboard. I got a piece of junk stuck between the Windows key and the Control key. All right, so just to clean things out here, my path equals the absolute path to spam.txt. All right, and what I want to do is show how to read multiple lines here. So let's go ahead and edit this in Notepad. Line 1, hello. Line 2, how. Line 3, are. Line 4, you. So I have 4 lines in this file, and I've just put lines 1 through 4, just so as we iterate through the file, you'll see how the lines correspond to the items. So now our spam.txt file is 1K, four lines of text. And we have a path object, and the path object goes to C users MAC code samples week 06 spam.txt. Now we're going to create a file. My file equals open, and we can just pass my path to it. And that's it. So now if we try to display the file object, you're going to see that it is a file object. Here's the name. It's an input output. Here's the name. We're in read mode, and here's its encoding. Doesn't show you anything about the file. I just want to show you that that's what's really displayed if you try to just print that directly. And just to note, the open function can also accept a string. Usually people use paths, but you could open a file by passing it a string instead of a path name. It just does the conversion internally. All right, so now that we have the file, we can read all the contents as a string if you'd like. So my full file contents equals my file dot read. All right, now if we display my full file contents, you're going to see all 4 lines. Line 1, hello. Line 2, how. Line 3, are. And line 4, you. So that allows us to view all the lines of the file at once. Now, you can, if you'd like, you could split the contents of that string by new line characters. So if you wanted to look at each line, you could split it by new line characters. I went into detail in last week's lab about how to read the individual file lines. So let's see, week 05, go back into week 05 template. There's the solution. So if I don't post this before midnight, let me open this with Visual Studio Code. So at the very top of log regex.py, you'll notice I did f.read and split lines. So if we jump back into the shell, we'll just start from scratch here. My path equals a path, and then we want to open up the file. So my file equals my open my path. All right, so now we have a file object, and my content lines equals my file dot read dot split lines. We see now we have each of the file lines within a list. So we could then take this list for line and my content lines, print line. We've now printed each of the lines to the screen. So that is how to not only read a file, but read a file in by individual lines. We can also now write a file. So before we wrote a file all at once. You don't have to write a file all at once. Let's say you had a loop. You would need to write to the file multiple times. So to do that, you're going to want to either be in write mode or append mode. So how do we do that? Let's go ahead and we have a file, spam. We'll just go ahead and delete it. Yeah, we'll create a new file. So let's go back to my test folder. Spam.txt. We'll just create eggs.txt. So we're going to open eggs file. So eggs path. And actually, let me just give you a little screen room so this isn't all jumbled together. Eggs path equals open. Sorry, path. And copy this. And we're going to call it eggs.text. So that's the first part. All right, so now we have a path. Now we want eggs file equals open eggs path. And now we're going to change the mode to write. All right. And we're going to do that in eggs file.write. So this is going to write contents to a file. Hello world. A new line, so \n. Okay. All right. And then we're going to close it. Eggs file.close. And it's always important that you close the file. So let's go ahead and look at this again. So we have eggs.txt. Got it? Hello world. All right. Now we can also append the file. So we had W for write. We can also change that to eggs file. So append means it exists, and we just want to add to it. Eggs file equals open eggs path A for append. File.write. Another line. All right. Eggs file.write. Yet another. Okay. Eggs file.close. Now, I should close this up. Now if we open up eggs.txt, we see now we've written more and more lines. And before I only wrote one line when we opened it in write mode, but you can write more than one line just as I did in append mode. And again, you could take this file now and we can open it up. So we have, if we want to open it up, we have our eggs file. So eggs path, eggs.txt, eggs file equals open eggs path. And we're going to open it as read mode. All right. And then so eggs text equals eggs file dot read. And if we display eggs text, we see hello world, another line, yet another. And then you can use the same method before where I use split lines to split those into individual list items. And then you could iterate over that list. So again, this is kind of putting it all together into one single concept. So that's all we're going to cover this week in terms of reading and writing files. So the lab this week will be doing file system forensics. So you're going to take some files, put them on your system, open them up, and we're going to look for something specific. Because if we look at the secret document, I'm Batman.